The issue of vote buying, we had about 3 questions. The issue of what to do with the outdoor elections, 2 questions. There's someone who mentioned about the Electoral Act. But let me respond, and I don't like the word react, to Yaga. That statement, yes, most of them came from Yaga, but is an offshoot of a general statement that was released by the civil society organization. We stand by what Yaga released. It wasn't far from what other organizations, including TAF Africa, released. We believe that what they released in their statement are actually what happened during the election. And I think it's time for us as civil society to also speak to the likes of political parties that think that we will go there to do their bidding. That will not happen. So what Yaga put out there are actually what, and I'm speaking as one who was in the field, it's completely in agreement with what other organizations put out. And no one should call out a particular organization and wanting to blackmail them. We will not succumb to blackmail.
About vote buying. So vote buying is contained in the document, and some of the reforms that we've talked about are contained in this document, which will be released to you shortly. But there's a part about accountability and impunity, and the fact that people are not going to jail as a result of vote buying is one that's really troubling. And one of the things that we've called on the National Assembly to do is to review the sanctions. So you look at the law, says bribery and conspiracy. That's the extent to which the law, makes prescriptions for vote buying. And what we are, advocating is the need to look at the sanctions regime, for this kinds of behavior, because continuous vote buying undermines democracy to a large extent. But also to Nigerians and the voters to understand the implication of selling their votes. There's a reason why politicians are targeting voters and urging them to sell their vote, because votes are counted, at elections. If they didn't matter, then the politicians will not be making that huge investment. So when we sell our votes as Nigerians, we actually sell our voice. Don't expect a political leader or a leader to be accountable to you when you sell your votes. Someone asked the question about what plans do we have. Again, in a short while, you would receive copies of the memorandum. But this memorandum, it contains recommendations that both international and domestic observers, including citizens, have made. They will, be forwarded to the National Assembly. We're going to be engaging, and those of you who have been part of this journey with this cohort, you know that electoral reform is a key area of advocacy for all the organizations here. So it's not going to stop. This press briefing is just to inform you about what we have done in the last 1 year after the elections. All the recommendations are contained in this document. And we hope that you would use this document as a reference point, for issues and conversations around reforms. You talked about low voter turnout at elections. There are different dimensions to this. If you listen carefully, we talked about the need to audit our voters register. And we also want to restate that point, that it's important that we audit our voters register to eliminate duplications on the voters register, so we have a true picture, of the number of people that we have on our voters register. But more importantly, is that if people don't trust the electoral process, they're not going to show up to cast their vote. And so we constantly talk about electoral integrity and the need to sanitize our electoral process. But also tied to it is that when people show up at elections and governance does not deliver, they feel that there's no point, showing up to cast their vote. And that's why we can't talk about low turnout without the quality of governance. So governance needs to improve for people to show up. I think the point about collation of results have been tackled. It's contained in the memo. What needs to be done? We need greater transparency, in our results collation process. even if it means subjecting it to some sort of independent audit of the of the results process is critical. The point about the judiciary, which was mentioned, yes, in this memo, we also have provisions around how to strengthen the election adjudication process. And more importantly, we've advanced detailed recommendations on issues relating to the timelines for concluding election disputes. We also look at the need for the courts to, in the course of addressing or resolving electoral disputes, be guided by certain democratic values and principles. And I think the last question relates to Yiga Africa. Please be reminded, this press conference is not a Yiga Africa's press conference. This is a press conference by the organizations who are working on elections for years, and the memo is about the organizations who are here. It's not a Yiga Africa press conference. But I just want to say that we have seen the statement, and as an institution, our report is out there. So if you have any question, please refer to our reports that provides all the necessary clarifications.
But as you heard in the text, part of the proposal of civil society is that an Electoral Offences Commission, National Electoral Offences Commission, should be put in place. And we are all aware, that this has been in the pipeline, but somehow we don't know why the political class, hasn't moved it very fast. If we had that, it will go a long way in dealing with the impunity that we see in the electoral process. That's very important. So it's one of the key recommendations. And I believe that together we have a duty to push the case for the establishment and the effective functioning of an Electoral Offences Commission. Second point I'd like to talk about, somebody talked about voter turnout and what could be done looking towards the all-circle elections coming up on the 16th of November in Ondo State. Well, part of the work begins with us. Our expectation will be that after here, the Edo elections, have come and gone now. Well, even as we take the fallouts, focus should now be towards Ondo, and we should devote much of our attention towards voter education. The issue of voter apathy or poor turnout is a big issue, especially coming from 2023 and the experiences of people. But we need to educate our colleagues, the citizens of this country, that democracy continues to be work in progress. It won't be a 100 meters dash. It is some kind of marathon, if you permit me to say that word. That is to say, incrementally, to continue to improve. The Edo election that we're talking about, it's not as if everything was bad about it. And those of us who were on the field saw that as he started in the morning on the field, much went well. In the afternoon, yes. And then problems started with collation. So a lot of progress has been made, even going from Edo. And we should push this narrative, to our city, to our colleagues, that the citizens, who are going to vote, that yes, this may have happened, in the conduct of the electoral process, but things have improved significantly, and we expect that, things will continue to improve. As we speak, I know, that, the election management body and other stakeholder groups have been working together there to see how an improved election will be conducted there. We should add our own input into all of that to make sure that that happens.
You can't do away with judicial review. And what it simply means is if people have grievance, they should go to what? To court to ventilate those grievances. And so we cannot eliminate that, because part of constitutional democracy is to have judicial review, because if you look at the relationship between the executive and the legislature, there has to be someone who can serve as an arbiter. So I think we need to understand that. I think the bigger question is whether substantial justice should be traded for legal technicalities. And these are fundamental issues that speak to, our democracy. And what, we have said, is the need for judicial independence. And that's what has always been advocated. That is a greater need for judicial independence. There's a great need, for the sort of agencies of accountability within the judiciary, and in this case, the National Judicial Council, needs to perform its role in ensuring that judges who are appointed to litigate, or judges who are appointed to adjudicate on election cases, they need to be trained, they need to be judges of impeccable character, and where you have judicial officers who deviate, from the norm, there has to be some level of sanctions. So these are some of the issues that we've highlighted in terms of the judiciary. But judicial review is a fundamental part of our democracy. But also tied to this is the whole discussion around alternative dispute resolution, that we do have an opportunity to begin to think about what ways, can we address some of the concerns that people have when it comes to elections, so that always we don't keep deferring to the courts to determine the final vote. The final vote should be determined by voters who are kingmakers in elections, and not by judges.